Who you got? The best quarterback in the league or Patrick Mahomes? That's what I've been seeing on TV.
Don't do that, man. That's the most absurd thing ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. It is Foxworth Friday. Domonique Foxworth, what's going on?
Man, it's happy to be back. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week, but I thoroughly enjoyed Spencer. I don't know. I like listening to Spencer more than I like listening to myself, so it's nice to have him on.
Nah, man, Spencer came through on the Hail Mary. It's greatly appreciated. Just want to let people know off the top, got an episode of Game Theory Friday night, 11 o'clock on HBO and HBO Max. Check it out. I think we did all right. Hey, man, I did my first late night television show appearance. I went on to Seth Meyers, the Late Night with Seth Meyers program.
So first of all, I watched the first episode of Game Theory and I loved it. Particularly the end of it, like that got into union stuff and what is real player strength and all that stuff. That's right up my damn alley, and you did an excellent job on that.
Appreciate that.
And yeah, Seth Meyers, that's a big deal, man. That's like you open in a movie, you're the star and actor, and like that's like top of the top.
You know what? I didn't realize actually the big deal part until I'm walking in the Rockefeller Center, both when I'm walking in and I'm walking out, and people ask me for pictures. They don't even be nice about it. They're just like, yo, can I get a picture? And I did one dude, and I'm like, hey, man, ain't no high. Ain't no nothing like that, but he was there with his queen and his seeds. You know what I'm saying? And I did that. And then when I was walking out, it was kind of the same thing. And then it dawned on me, that door at Rockefeller Center is where you see people to take pictures with. Like that, like if I were famous, that's where the people would be behind the barricade. And right, and be doing all that stuff. But like it's still kind of like just office building. Like, have you ever been to a meeting like at the Chrysler building before?
Yeah, I think so. Like
the Chrysler building is a big thing, like in the concept of New York and all of that stuff. But it's also an office building.
Yeah, people
right. Like once you get inside, you're like, oh, this is like every other office building I've been to in Midtown. Like once you get beyond what it seemed like, But no, the LeBron thing was interesting because it was important to me, and I was talking to the writers about it, and I don't know if I did a good enough job on this, but it isn't an attack on LeBron. And if you check it out, it's just me talking about the idea of player empowerment and whether that's really happened or it's really just been LeBron empowerment. Like, it ain't so much a knock on him, but it's so wild to me, like how bad we want to believe in this capitalism that we got to try to make it seem like we as the labor class are winning when we are not. Yeah. That simply like sports are just like everywhere else where the revenues are going up and the wages not in the same fashion.
Yeah, this is something that drives me crazy given my union background, and it's like the way that fans react to it is tied up in like race and jealousy and all types of other things. But the LeBron thing hit me in particular because, as you know, I worked for the NBA Players Union for a year, and I remember being in executive committee meetings where LeBron was on the executive committee, and it's I don't know, it was like 7 players on that group. So it's like Steph, LeBron, Corver, like Iguodala, like guys like that. We're in the room. And I'm coming from football, and I'm young, and I'm fiery, aggressive guy, as you like generally know about me. And I'm like trying to talk about the things that we want to go take from the league. And then we start having these conversations, and it struck me that, and this was 2015, I guess, 2016, maybe 2015 or 16. And it hit me that LeBron is closer to them than he is to the like working class of players or the lower class, the middle class of players. And he made it clear many years later that not only is he close to them, he want to be one of them. And it's not a knock on him. Like, I get it, everybody's out for their own gain in some ways, but it just made it clear to me that the job of leading that union, the job of leading any union is hard because there's so many disparate interests across, like no one's in the same place. But that union, like the separation is so much bigger, and it would feel bad to tell LeBron like, no, you shouldn't chase that, while also he's having his wages actively suppressed throughout
Right.
all of this. It's like, and so to your point, you made fair criticism of him without doing a takedown, which like we're not trying to do a takedown, just like understand that this is different. You ain't, yeah.
Yeah, like I always feel like with the NFL, there's 4 classes of players: star quarterbacks,
Yep,
other quarterbacks, star everybody else, and then the other 75% of the league.
yep.
Right? Like that's basically who it is, and their interests are disparate. But the basketball thing is different because for years it was a middle class union, right? That's why like Roger Mason would be the dude that was running the union. And it's been a great deal for the middle class of NBA players because of the max salary, right?
Exactly.
Like the max salary takes the wages down for those guys and means a whole lot more money that goes around to dudes who honestly aren't nearly as good. They were winning. And so Chris Paul, LeBron, and those cats were like, hey, man, that ain't working out so well for us. It's sort of how Chris Paul runs the union, right? It's that class of dudes that run the union. And this told me a lot. When there's a rule in place, or there was a rule in place, that if a player was over 36, the longest his contract extension could be was for 2 years. And when Chris Paul took over the union, they pushed that to 38. Coincidentally, Chris Paul was about to turn 36, and his deal was about to come up, right? The real question is, why is that provision there in the first place, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to give me this long contract unless you want to. So why do we have something in place to stop you from doing something that you want? Oh, because you don't trust yourself, right? So the idea that the push was to take that to 38 rather than to get that off the books entirely was like, oh, okay, this is a real accommodation, this sort of move that you can do when you as rich as Chris Paul.
And it's like about taking away players' leverage at every turn. And the sad part is it turns the situation into crabs in a barrel. Sometimes it's like easily can turn into that because guys will see this like, oh, you out for yourself, when actually like, why are we even discussing this? You know, like this should even be a thing that we allow to happen. Like, why are we even having any limitations whatsoever? But you get in a situation where you have to fight it. The one thing I will say about LeBron, just to make sure that it doesn't sound like I'm trying to like rip his union participation, is again, I'm in the meeting, and this is the time LeBron like effectively dunked on me in the meeting. Again, it's a small group. It's like the leadership from the executive side of the union and the vice presidents of the union, which again is like 7 of them. And the idea of extending healthcare for former players was on the table. And again, I'm from my perspective, it's like, all right, we need to get the league to pay for this, because what the league is going to want to do in that situation is fine. We'll extend healthcare as long as you want, but this technically is a benefit. So this is going to come out of the money that's allotted for your salaries. And I'm like, no, we need to bring this up at the end and try to make sure that we use the leverage to force them to pay for it. And like, again, I'm getting like fired up. LeBron cut me off and was like, no, the right thing to do is to take care of these players for longer. It doesn't matter who pays for it. And so like and that's like money out of his pocket.
Right.
But again, that's one of those things. I had this conversation with a friend of mine last night where he was like, I don't know, it's through the DeMar Hamlin stuff. He was like telling me, I appreciate that it feels like you have integrity on these issues and like you don't care. You know the NFL is going to be mad and you'll speak to that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not above selling out. It's just I got enough money that I don't have to sell out.
Right.
You know, like if and this is a stretch, but for some wild reason, the NFL calls ESPN is like, hey, get Foxworth off the air. Like, I know that's a possibility. I don't think it's a realistic possibility. I ain't doing nothing that crazy. But if that happens, I'll be fine. And like, I understand that LeBron has the power and the leverage and the financial security to do those sorts of things, which is why sometimes I think it's fair for you to make criticism like you're making. Is like, at some point, you've done enough for yourself.
Right.
Like, you do have the power and leverage. And the last thing I say, sorry, this stuff is important to me, obviously, so I get off on the tangent. The last thing I'll say about the difference between the NFL and the NBA and the unions and the power in it is, you mentioned the stratifications of players, they're so much younger in the NFL. Like all the guys relative to the rest of the group, all the guys that are in the bottom of that group are young because they roll them out, and they roll them out, and they roll them out if you're not good enough to get a big contract extension. And that makes for a much bigger challenge that I think that the NBA players have, because it's not the same age stratification that you find in there.
And the NFL basically set it up to where something like 50% of the roster is going to be guys on first contract.
Exactly.
Like, it was not always that everybody who got drafted got on the roster, which it feels a lot more like. But once they put in those provisions to make you have to treat those middle class dudes with decent salaries, they were like, well, why would we do that? But we could just go get cheaper children.
Right. Yep. You gotta define yourself as much more valuable. You don't, if you're an interchangeable part, no matter how nice a guy you are, and even if you're better than the guy that he brought in, you got to be a lot better to get a respectable second contract. Otherwise, we'll bring somebody else in to run down on kickoff and punt and to come in when somebody's hurt every now and then.
Yeah, but no, the game of LeBron trying to become the owner, like, I just wish all of us. Organized labor has been beaten down so badly in this country. And the worst part about it to me is not simply that organized labor has been beaten down, but they turned people against it, right? And it's a trickier situation now that we've gone to a service-based economy, because I think that people had a better understanding of the concept and need for union when people out there working with their hands, right, might wind up in the sausage grinder by accident, right? Like, I think that people could relate to that. I think it's hard for them to relate to the idea of the solidarity of the pencil pusher or anything else, that goes around. But in the end, man, they keep making more money and the people do not. The money keeps going up in sports, and so often we see that share of income or revenue that goes to the players go down. It's so wild. Baseball, which had the strongest union in the United States of America at a point, go look at what the divisions are, the money that they get now. It ain't what it used to be. And I don't even really think it's that much the fault of the union itself. Like, I think baseball's got two things at play. One of them, that union lost so much goodwill in the 90s over the steroid situation. And the owners to a certain degree also, but it didn't allow them to be they took on every fight before and they won every fight. And then they went 25 years without getting into a fight. The other part is, and this is where I find to be interesting, I would imagine not having hockey in this discussion. Baseball got the most right-wing situation going on amongst its membership base, and that's a bunch of people who've been told union bad or whatever it is. They, like, when that steroid thing came out, they were willing to sell each other out so fast in that one.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and I also think that they've separated the classes in baseball so much so that it's hard to get the most powerful players to be willing to sacrifice now. Because every offseason, those guys, even though the percentage of overall revenue going to baseball players is definitely going down, the guys at the top, every year, they out here hitting home runs longer than the ones before. So, like, if there is a fight, you need those faces. You need that power to be willing to withstand that fight. And it's hard for them to look at it and be like, yeah, this is a fight worth having.
Yeah. Well, it's also part of why they ain't got no problem going to these other countries, getting them dudes, because they think they're going to be a little more docile, a little bit more in that can't go back situation, right? Like, that they wind up with that one. And I also think that, like, when you start talking about this, the big salaries go up, but we see average salary not going up. Because those owners in baseball, they've been caught on this before. And you see this happen where it's like, wow, everybody's getting a 2-year, $12 million deal. Wonder what that's all about. They will absolutely get together and be like, yo, so what we about to do? What I want to see, though, I don't know if you've been keeping up with my man Steve Cohen up there with the Mets. I mean, I'm typically not a big fan of white-collar criminals, but I bet you he ain't trying to hear none of that. Yeah, get your weight up, dog. Get your weight up.
I respect the repeated, like, they made a rule to try to slow him down and named it after him. And he answered it by saying, well, if it's named after me, I might as well break it. The one, like, that does give me hope. Oh yeah, just make it rain on everybody. That does give me hope. But the one thing he didn't get in that Aaron Judge race, and like people believe that speaks to the collusion. Like, all right, well, that's my guy, because Steinbrenner apparently had like a lot of leverage in getting him into the major leagues, getting him that team. And he's like, I'm gonna look out for my man. But the rest of y'all,
I don't know what Steinbrenner was thinking with that one, because Steinbrenner over there trying to be cheap. Like, let me tell you, the worst thing in the world, if you are the owner of the Yankees, is the Mets being good.
Yeah.
The worst. The worst. Like, the Mets are not the Nets, right? Where the Nets ain't really got no people up here. Like, the Yankees are the Yankees. Don't get it twisted. But the Mets mean something here, right? Like, the Mets got a lot of people behind them. And when the Mets are rolling, New York can become a Mets town. Like, when people talk about 86, they were like, yo, it was about the Mets in New York in 86.
I mean, the future of all this player stuff, and like it's really hard because, I mean, yeah, at some point in off season we have more time. We could probably dive into a real serious union conversation, but like it's hard to imagine the thing that stems the tide. You know, it's like, because the power and the leverage, and players are much more sensitive to fan backlash than leagues are, because leagues have commissioners, and commissioners are there for everyone to get mad at, and the owners are like, nah, go ahead and walk your ass out there and get yelled at while we piss off the fans. And it doesn't happen for players, because players don't have that same shield, because the leader of the union is not nearly as recognizable or as important as the players in the union. So I remember during our fights where the players would start to, they would show resolve until we got to that 11th hour. And it was like, that pressure was building on from everywhere, not just financial pressure, not just fan pressure. It's also personal pressure. It's a real tough fight to have, and nobody's ever on your side if you're young and you got more money than them.
Well, you know, the G Upshaw quote, I went to the top of the hill, I turned around, and I was by myself.
Been there.
Yep, that's what he said. He was like, okay, cool. Got it. I now understand what the job is.
Yep.
All right. Y'all just want to get paid? All right, then I'll see what I can do to get y'all paid. It's just funny. LeBron gonna be the owner one day. And every time, we talk about this all the time. Like, yo, the problem with the league is it ain't got no black owners. You ever worked for a black person before? I have. It ain't that much different.
Yeah.
Like, a boss is a boss is a boss. Go talk to somebody who worked for Bob Johnson. Go talk to somebody who worked at BET. Go ask them if they was like, yeah, but I'm so glad I'm working for the black man.
Yeah. I mean, I think I am all for pushing for that, as like, because of fairness reasons. I don't think that it changes the way anyone is treated, because not only in basketball, not only do you have black owners, you got former players.
Yeah, but Domonique, the thing is, the reason we ain't got no black owners ain't because of the fairness of the league, it's the fairness of the world. Like,
yeah, that's
we ain't got that kind of paper. Yep. Like, Oprah barely got that kind of paper.
And that happened recently. Like, there was a time when these franchises were much more affordable, but still, I mean, I look back at like Al Davis didn't own a majority stake in the Raiders until like the 2000s. So like putting together a group and debt and getting enough money to buy a team, even if you don't have it straight off the top, is not impossible. But it gets real damn hard when you start looking at 8Bs. Like, and if your net worth is 1B and you got to buy something worth 8Bs, that's real damn hard to put together.
And the people you got to go get that money from got more money than you. So they can always just decide that they go do it. But you know the story on how Al Davis pulled that off, right?
Oh, well, no, I know the story of how Al Davis got ownership of the team.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah. But he didn't actually get, I think it was in the 2000s when he was able to get majority on it. I'm talking about. But yeah, for those who don't know, please tell this wonderful story.
All right, because I think he got the full ownership. It was either in 03 or 05.
Right.
But Al Davis, this is the movie I'd watch, right? Al Davis was the coach of the Raiders. It became the GM of the Raiders, right?
Like, wasn't he commissioner of a competitive league?
Yes,
Al Davis is an amazing human being.
How did he get all the way from this, right? Like, he was a legitimate football coach, right? Like, the coach. He got it. He became the commissioner of the AFL. He thought that when the merger came that he was going to be the new commissioner. I'm like, fool. The new league is not called the AFL. It's called the NFL. Like Lady Eloise bought y'all. Lady Eloise is going to be the one that's in charge. All right. But in 1972, the man who was the managing general partner, because if you watch the Raiders when we were growing up, they never called Al Davis the owner. They were very careful to call him the managing general partner because that team was run by a 3-person partnership. The guy that was the managing partner went to Munich for the 1972 Olympics. While he was gone, Al Davis called a meeting with the other partner. I'm not sure the particulars, but in that meeting, they took a vote to make Al Davis the managing general partner. And since they had 2 out of 3 people present, they had quorum. That man came back from vacation to find out that he ain't had no team.
Cut throat. I bet. It's like there's no words for it. And like that gets, I think Al Davis probably likes the idea that people don't. Well, he's dead now, but like when he was alive, liked the idea that people didn't talk about it. I think that should be like on the top line of the Al Davis biography. It's the most interesting part of a man whose life is incredibly interesting, like the professional. And then like he sued the league a bunch of times. Like that's he a wild dude. And that we are moving away from that. I think you talk about this often with like college football coaches and how corporate everything's getting.
Yeah.
The same thing's happening in NFL. They are getting more and more corporate, further and further away from the personalities of people like Al Davis. And the league ain't letting nobody back in the league to act like Al Davis. Wait till Jerry Jones is gone. It's gonna be all borings.
Now, like the owners in the league for a while did feel more like regular people. Like they were much richer, absolutely, no question about it. But they felt a lot more like regular people who happened to, somehow come up on a team. Like it was kind of like I used to own a minor league team. Now I own a major league team, right? Then it ain't that no more, man. These cats are just filthy, stinking rich.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing, but I feel pretty certain that it's true. Is that like the difference in like net worth of teams that own the team now and like the median or even the mean net worth of people in America? I would guess the delta is much bigger now than it ever has been. Like that seems like a reasonable, fair thing to get to assume. And you got to have generational to get in there now. Like it's not, I don't even know what the word is for it because it's not like, like you don't even know where these people live. Like I feel like back in the day, you could be like, the guy who could buy the team, like in the 70s, the guy who could buy the team, he lived at the top of the hill. Now the guy that bought the team is setting up a colony on Mars. Like you don't even know. Like it's just a different lifestyle altogether.
Yeah, man.
And yet when there's a fight, everybody's like, these players are selfish.
Right. Yep. They'll know. Switch gears on this a little bit. Talk about the AFC Championship game. Who you got? The best quarterback in the league or Patrick Mahomes? That's what I've been seeing on TV.
Don't do that, man. That's the most absurd thing ever. It bled into the breaks of Get Up where I'm arguing with people like,
and they mean this.
Yeah. And like I get after a big win and after a pretty long run of impressive play from Joe Burrow, like you want to say something definitive about him. Like I get that. But you got to also look at how Patrick Mahomes' run has been longer and also like more impressive. And the thing I hate most about not the thing I hate most, but one of the difficult things is when you're comparing people, like it always feels like you're like trying to tear somebody else down. Like saying Patrick Mahomes is better requires me to point out that Joe Burrow hasn't done a number of things that Patrick Mahomes has done, which is not fair. Joe Burrow is great. He's on an impressive trajectory, but he ain't come back from down 10 in the Super Bowl. He ain't come back from multiple touchdowns against Houston. He ain't come back against the Bills last year. He ain't thrown 50 touchdowns in a season. He don't got an MVP. Like, he don't got a Super Bowl trophy or a Super Bowl MVP. He did have a great showing in the Super Bowl last year, but like even the run last year was like the first game against the Titans was Jamar Chase like did that game. His big like comeback against the Chiefs, he played well, but he also tried to throw that game away a bunch. Like that was more about a Mahomes collapse if you're gonna like parse credit in that thing. And even last week's game, he made good decisions. and he was smart, but he ain't like it. They were road grading the Bills, like that O-line in the running game. So like I hate doing that because he's cool as he's talented as hell, but it's okay to say all that stuff and say, but he ain't Patrick.
It just feel like we trying too hard, right? Because I'm gonna throw this out here. Somebody said this in a meeting on Game Theory. Nobody ever tried to say that Russell Wilson was better than Aaron Rodgers when the Seahawks owned the Packers.
Right.
Nobody tried to say Colin Kaepernick was better than Aaron Rodgers when he absolutely owned the Packers. Nobody ever tried to make that argument, right? Kaepernick had gone to a Super Bowl, right? Nobody tried to make that point. Joe Burrow managed to go to a Super Bowl. We just came off last postseason where it was weird because the Bills lost that game where Josh Allen was incredible, where Patrick Mahomes had possibly the most improbable field goal drive I've ever seen. It did not seem mathematically possible that they could get down there. We talked more about Leslie Frazier's defense than we talked about the fact that they actually did the damn thing and made that happen. But the Bills lost that game, and somehow that was an argument that Josh Allen could be better than Mahomes. The Bengals win the next game where Joe Burrow's numbers, if you go look at them, were fairly pedestrian in that AFC Championship game. And that is in large part being used to make the argument that Joe Burrow is better than Patrick Mahomes, often by the same people. And that's why I'm confused, right? It was a win that did it for Burrow. Josh Allen didn't actually need to get the win in order to make this happen, while talking about the best quarterback we've ever seen. Like I heard Orlovsky on TV.
Oh, God.
Well, what got me about it is I'm like, this is when you got to realize we're just bored with talking about how dope Mahomes is, and we're just trying to find nice things to say about other people.
Right.
Because it was this very particular definition of quarterback, right? And like, well, you know, because Joe Burrow is better at doing these little bitty things that all like add up to a tapestry that then become Joe Burrow. And no, Patrick Mahomes don't know how to do that because he ain't got to, dog. That's why he doesn't know, like it doesn't go that way.
The thing is, I went through all those things that Patrick Mahomes has done, and probably the most impressive thing is that he's done it again in a different way. It's like all those things that he's done so impressively, he did under an offense that we kind of considered soft with Tyreek Hill, who, as good as Travis Kelce is, me as a defensive player or defensive mind, I'd rather play against a team whose number one option is Tyreek Hill. I mean, it was number one option is Travis Kelce rather than Tyreek Hill, what he can do your defense. Right. So you take away the best weapon, potentially one of the best weapons in football. You take that away, and he's found another way to still have the best motherfucking offense in the league and get a motherfucking MVP. I'm sorry, Dan. That bleeps need to be in this to understand how impressive this has been. And like people are like, to your point, I don't know. I have no clue why they want to discredit LeVon Mahomes II. I can't quite figure out why Patrick LeVon Mahomes is someone who they do not want to celebrate time and time again. I think the kindness in me wants to say that you're just looking for something to say and
something new.
Right. But then you start laying out all these other examples where we had an opportunity to say something new about other people, and we didn't do that something new saying. And it's just weird to me. It doesn't make sense. And I think like I can sympathize with Orlovsky because I know how it is when you are in the pre-show meeting for Get Up. You have to say something definitive because the way that we think about that show is like, all right, it's 8 in the morning, or excuse me, it's 10 in the morning to 12. No, I mean, it's 8 to 10. And people are getting ready for work. People are walking around. You want to have a definitive statement that makes people stop and listen. So Dan wanted to say something definitive to make people stop and listen. But in Dan's damn head, he know that Burrow not better than Mahomes, which is why he was like, he do this better. He do this better. He do this better. But you know what? This little lane of quarterbacking. it's like, Dad, you know better. You know better than what you're doing. But I get where you coming from. You want to give him some sort of title because it ain't fun to get up on Monday morning after Burrow has a very impressive win. His team does something very impressive in the snow. It's not fun to get up there and say, good win. On to next week, which is what we should be saying.
Or it's not fun to jump up and be like, did you know Josh Allen has the most turnovers in the NFL in the last 3 years? Like that's part of where it gets interesting to me is, I mean, we went real hard on Josh Allen. Josh Allen has not reached the, so when you going to do it, dog? Yeah. Right? Like I didn't hear that surrounding conversation around that dude when it got to that point. I'm just, this year with Mahomes and with who they were playing with, and to make first team All-Pro. I'm going to throw something out here. This is something I don't think people realize, which is how hard it is to make first team All-Pro as a quarterback. Drew Brees was never first team All-Pro. I don't think he's the only Hall of Famer that you'll look up at and be like, yo, that guy was never first team All-Pro. Patrick Mahomes is 27 years old and is two-time first team All-Pro. Tom Brady was not first team All-Pro for the first time until he was 30. Until he was 30. That's when he got first team All-Pro for the first time. Aaron Rodgers now has it 4 times, but those last 2 were those MVP years that he stacked up there on the back end. Mahomes been to 5 AFC championship games in a row. And by the way, they had a chance to win every single one of them up until this point. They lost that first one when the Patriots did something that was still, to me, I think, underrated. Just split Gronk out wide and just said, pass the ball to Will. What's anybody going to do about this? And then just walk down the field.
That was actually, that was the strategic part of the game that I think matters. But also, it wasn't Clark. Who was it? Somebody jumped off sides. That was the defining play. It's like, right. They actually had that game won.
That's right.
They actually had that game won and someone jumped off sides. And so, like, they should have won that one. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go back.
Yeah. Then last year, where Mahomes, the second half, they were owning him in the first half. And that was my man's Lou.
Anaromo.
Yeah, Lou was a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Lou was a beast. Like, I do want to say this. While I definitely want to make sure that my thing with Mahomes, just to kind of put a button on that, is let's just enjoy it. We do this with a lot of other people, right? Yeah. Like, I guess Michael Jordan messed around and never lost again. Therefore, he made it to where all we did was enjoy him. But we don't spend enough time talking about the absurdity of this. Do you realize Cincinnati Bengals, between last postseason and this postseason, have won as many postseason games as they had in franchise history prior to this, right? Because I grew up at a time where the Bengals went to the Super Bowl when I was 8 years old. They went to the Super Bowl when I couldn't remember it when I was 1 year old. But I ain't realized, but them next years, boy, they became defining. To win like this with that team is amazing.
One of the things that I bring up a lot, and D Ford was the guy that jumped off sides. Thanks for the reminder there, Dan. One of the things that I bring up a lot is that I think that it's more important to have a quarterback in a good situation. If you look around the league, you'll see all the best quarterbacks in football in the last several years came into good situations, and that allows them, like, you take pressure off them. That allows them time to develop. The argument for Joe Burrow is he the only one. You dropped him in a trash situation, and he's still I rise.
Bro, we told him, I was telling him to hold out.
Me
I
too.
was like, you ain't got to go there if you don't want to.
Yeah, and like, that's an incredible thing. Patrick Mahomes' situation was good. Everybody else at a top of the league quarterbacks came into like pretty close to good situations, and he rose up and lifted them. And like, they brought in good players, obviously lots of good players, and the coaching staff seems to be strong too. But that is a feather in his cap that Mahomes can never get. Like, he came into a competitive team, set a year, took it over, and then took that team to God level. But that don't mean that we got to say he better.
No, I mean, I will say this, man. It is impressive that Joe Burrow kicks it like he does, and it works.
I love it.
I love it. That's the thing that's happening here. All right, and this gets me. It happened. It was kind of like the thing with Josh Allen too. hey, man, these white boys seem cool, and y'all gonna mess around and turn us against them with your shenanigans when it ain't even really their fault. Like, Joe Burrow definitely thinks he's better than Patrick Mahomes. He can say that.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. He can say it. He can believe it. And he is cool. And like, he even, like, it's clear that the aesthetic that he is kind of, I don't know, it makes it seem like it's premeditated. There's a lot of black influence in Joe Burrow's personality. And it's stuff that you guys have hated in black players for a long time. Now it's generally something that we love in Joe Burrow. But at least one thing I can respect or appreciate about Joe Burrow is he has not backed away from at least also being outspoken when it comes to like issues of race and society. Right. So like, I would never argue that somebody is putting, I mean, I would, but I'm not saying in this case that Joe Burrow is putting on some sort of mask. Like, it seems natural and comfortable for him to be this uber confident, cool ass, like, frankly, black athlete, like that General Steez. He said his favorite nickname is Joe Shiesty. And like it seems natural to me. So I'm not gonna like argue that he has to pretend to be something that he's not if it's natural. But also, it seems that he's aware of the culture that he is somewhat enmeshed himself in, and he's not backing away from it. He gonna tell you generally when y'all doing some race and deal with whatever backlash, because in part he knows throw them touchdowns, y'all can't do nothing to him. And also, he has another shield that he can use. Just like I said that I got enough money to say what I got to say. Yep. He got a couple of things that allow him to say and do what he wants to say.
Domonique, Joe Burrow won the Heisman Trophy and spoke out about food scarcity.
Love him. Love him.
That's what I'm saying.
Love him. How could you not? Love him. Like, I get it. I get it. In that slow motion video, I had to do two like little pieces on Get Up where it's like focus on me. I get to pick whatever plays I want from the weekend. I did it twice in one day. And so I had to pick out 6 plays. 2 of those were not even plays. I showed him do that spin pass twice and separate times because that was the coolest I've seen in a long time. That little pregame spin pass in the snow, put some music behind that thing. It was cold. I'm making everybody watch it. I love Joe Burrow. Y'all not gonna make me hate him just because I live in reality. He's the best. He's just not the best football
quarterback.
Player.
There we go. There we go. We went a while. I want to go to this other game, man. I turned on, pardon the interruption, yesterday. It was Pablo and Kornheiser, and they were asking the question if Brock Purdy should be the starter next season. And it was unequivocally yes, that Brock Purdy should be the starter. And the person that it was being posed against at first, Pablo, was like, yes, take Brock Purdy over Tom Brady. And I swear Trey Lance got to be over there like, what are we talking about here? Like, I want to point out a big difference between this and I think the example that is easy for people to go to, which is Tom Brady in 2001. They were already kind of out on Drew Bledsoe in 2001. Like, he was a really big name, but he was also becoming antiquated because he was just too slow, took too many sacks. Like, you can go look at it. I think that first year with Belichick there and Bledsoe, he wasn't so great. Then they, switched things over, leaned in on the defense. Okay, boom, voila, magic. It happened. You traded 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. Trey Lance got to start 1 game this year, and I just need you to tell me what Brock Purdy has done that you just don't think that Trey Lance can do. That's all I'm saying, right? Like, Purdy has done the job, and he deserves credit for doing the job. But, again, this is not like when they made that switch 10 years ago from Alex Smith to Kaepernick, it was like, oh, a dimension has been added. This is completely different. That ain't what's happening here. You're like, wow, look at him keep it going. That's cool.
Yeah. Lance played 1 game in a monsoon also. So like the 1 game we have to point to, it was like raining cats and dogs on the terrible Chicago field this season. So yeah, I think generally people are, I mean, we know this, it's not true. It's like you don't want to mix it up when things are going well. But I don't think that's how Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch think. If that's how they thought, they wouldn't have traded all they traded to get Trey Lance. That extra dimension matters. You look around this league, who's having success? It's all guys with that extra dimension. Even Joe Burrow. Look at that week 18 game against the Ravens.
Oh, he can move.
He's an athlete. Like it feels like a necessary part of your game going forward. And not to say that Purdy is not that, but if you want to imagine what Trey Lance could potentially be, you can look at the running ability that we see from Justin Fields. Like, that is the best case scenario. Now, imagine Justin Fields in a Shanahan offense. Imagine having to account for McCaffrey in the running game, Samuels in the running game, Ayuk going deep, Kittle's blocking and also running RPO game and splitting the middle of the field. Imagine having to account for all that and then having somebody who can not only get you 5 on his own read, but could get you 15, 20, 30 on his own read. And so whatever deficiencies he has from like not playing a lot of high level football, I don't think they matter, because right now they're not asking Purdy to do any like elaborate reads. Like, these are like one read plays. He's not, like, they're not asking him to do anything hard. He pretty much knows where he's going with the ball before the snap happens. If Trey Lance can be accurate enough in that situation, this team becomes something that is incredibly scary.
Yeah.
And best case, I guess the way that I think about it is, who would they rather have be their quarterback?
Yeah, and I just don't see how the answer to that is Brock Purdy.
Right. Who would they rather have the best version of?
Well, this is the other thing too, man. I hadn't really been keeping track of this number, but I've seen it come up a lot this week. I did not realize the Eagles had 70 sacks this year. Mm-hmm. Hey, guys, this is a lot to ask of the youngster who isn't necessarily the most talented guy to be out there. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts over there, it's wild. We talk more about Brock Purdy than Jalen Hurts, and the Jalen Hurts story is honestly every bit as improbable. The only difference between Jalen Hurts and Brock Purdy, when you talk about the improbability of being here, is that Jalen Hurts is a little more talented, right? That's it. But if the Eagles go, by the way, we might have a black quarterback Super Bowl on both sides for the first time ever. Yeah. And at which point I might have to fly home to watch that game with my daddy. It's a momentous sort of occasion if that goes down. But I thought about this with Kyle Shanahan. I feel like a lot of observers, because they said some report was that the 49ers are on the go forward Brock Purdy program. Feel like a lot of observers may be projecting onto him the same way they projected onto him when they tricked themselves into believing that he was going to trade 3 first-round picks to take Mac Jones with the number 3 pick in the draft. It feels like Kyle be wanting to go one way, and y'all be trying to foist other people upon him. Y'all are trying to give Kyle Shanahan, are you sure you want to take that guy? Have you met Brock? We have Brock over here. And it's like the 2 whitest dudes in the world, Brock and Matt Corkle. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, don't you want to give Matt Corkle a run? He's like, yo, I didn't get rich by being stupid. What are you talking about? But they keep, I just have a very difficult, do you realize how much you got to believe in a player to give up what they gave up to get Trey Lance? I don't believe that anybody does that and then is like, nah, I'm bailing on this. Do you see how many chances Washington gave Robert Griffin?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were in. And you could call it, Pablo made the point about the sunk cost fallacy. The reason it's called a fallacy is because people use it. You know what I'm saying? It's called a fallacy and it comes up because people implement it. But the truth is, there's no advantage to me to rolling with Brock Purdy, or at the very least, not having a legitimate quarterback competition.
The reason why the sunk cost fallacy does not apply in this way is the sunk cost fallacy is throwing good money after bad. We don't know that this money is bad yet. That's the thing. If Trey, I would be on board. Zach Wilson's an example. Zach Wilson it's pretty clear that he's not going to be the guy for the Jets. So investing more in trying to turn him into that, the sunk cost fallacy would apply, because he's played enough games to show that he may not be that guy. Trey Lance played 1 game this year, guys.
Right.
Also, in a monsoon. Relax.
We don't know if Brock Purdy is good money.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't know this. It has been impressive that they have kept this going, but we don't know if he's good money. If it's young guys in particular, I'm taking the more talented one every single time. That's why I think the Patriots need to put Matt Corkle on the bench. That Zappy dude looked like he more talented than him.
Who the hell is Matt Corkle?
Matt Corkle Jones.
Oh,
Matt short for Matt Corkle.
Oh, is it really?
McCorkle, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was wondering who. I thought you were making a reference that I didn't get. What is a McCorkle? I thought Matt was short for Matthew. No.
Mac Jones is Matt Corkle Jones, if I'm not mistaken. Let me make sure I got this right. And those of you who know that my father's name is Mac Jones, I'll tell you right now, his name, Mac, is short for Mac. Yeah, it is Michael McCorkle Jones.
Nice. I like that. I would say this is a random aside, but it might become like something that we're all talking about next week, depending on the results of these games. But I'll ask you a rhetorical question. Who's the best defense in football right now? The obvious answer is the 49ers. You know what Patrick Mahomes did to them?
Tell me.
423. 3 touchdowns. 44 points, 423 yards on 25 completions, and Tyreek Hill was in Miami. What is we doing?
What are we doing?
What are we doing? 423?
My last question before we dip out, as I'm looking at Matt Corkle's wiki page. And it makes a reference to his high school coach. Is there any whiter nickname to go by than Corky? Have you ever met a black Corky? I have never met a black Corky. Have you met a black Corky? I ain't met no Mexican Corky, and I'd have met a lot of Mexicans. I ain't met a Mexican Corky yet.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I've never, ever met. I don't think I know a Corky, but if you say Corky, honestly, I'm imagining like a preteen girl, probably like Corky.
Well, maybe we are of slightly different generations. I know exactly who I think of when I hear Corky. And I think the people of my age will remember the Corky that I'm thinking about from a TV show called Life Goes On. That is my first thought when I think of Corky. I'm trying to figure out how you start calling somebody Corky in the first place.
McCorkle. It's the only way.
Nah. So on this one, this guy Corky, who was Matt Corkle's high school coach, he said his dad read about a war hero who called his own son Corky, and I just need to know why you called your boy Corky in the first place.
I don't know. It has to be a story that involves like wine, I feel like.
And it's funny. I was wondering, like, what could Corky possibly be short for? There you go. Matt Corkle.
Oh, man. 423. That's all.
That is Domonique Foxworth. Check him out on Get Up. Check him out on Anscape. Check him out on the Domonique Foxworth Show. Check him out on Debatable. And, of course, check him here on Foxworth Fridays. My dude, I appreciate you.
423.
423. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Adi Khan, Parker Owens, and Dan Stancic handling everything behind the scenes. Thank you, gentlemen. Remember, hit the voicemail line, 860-516-4119. Tell us about the most embarrassed you have been by your parents, whether they did it on purpose or otherwise. 860-516-4119. Also, check out Game Theory Fridays, 11 p.m. Eastern on HBO and HBO Max. Also streaming on HBO Max. Remember to follow The Right Time. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. And we'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.
Thanks for checking out The Right Time with Bomani Jones podcast.
You can listen or follow on the ESPN app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Right Time
with Bomani Jones.